Just raise your hand. Give him a great big round of applause. He and I are both Morehouse men and both pastors because I still lead my church. Did y'all know that?
Yeah.
I still return to Ebenezer every Sunday unless I'm preaching for somebody else. And the reason I do that is my incredible colleagues who are here, notwithstanding, I don't want to spend all my time talking to politicians. I'm afraid I might accidentally become one. And my hope is that somehow I can wade in the waters of politics and public policy and still be much more servant leader who has to put up with politics because it allows me every now and then to get something incredible done. That's why we put up with it. Every now and then you get to do something amazing. 3 months after I got here, we passed the expanded child tax credit. That is a tax cut for poor people. It's a tax cut for middle class families, for working class families. And when we did that in 2021, it cut child poverty by nearly 50%. If you say, well, I didn't feel that, nearly 50%, where? Here's why you didn't feel it. We did it for 6 months. And we could not get our colleagues to extend it, but from June of 2021 to December of 2021, I promise you, you know people in your neighborhood, people in your community, people in your church, in your house of worship, people who owe you money and they didn't tell you because you were going to ask for it back. They got $200-300 checks per child per month. Now, that's a tax cut I can get behind. That's much better than a tax cut for Elon Musk.
That's right. Financial. But I come to this work, as Senator Booker's already said, from the prophetic tradition of the black church. And let me hasten to say that when we say the black church, we have never, ever meant anything racially exclusive about that. We're talking about the fact that there needed to be a witness in America that said that slavery and Christianity are incompatible. Say that. And Christian faith are incompatible. And so the only reason we had to create something called the black church is because even communion was segregated, and we felt that that was a heresy that we could not bear. So we established our own independent churches so that we could say that of one blood, God has made all nations together for the same God. And out of that independent church witness came the Harriet Tubmans of the world, who was A&E Zion. Came so many of our voices. Came Fannie Lou Hamer, who was filled with the Spirit. Came Martin Luther King Jr. It was that independent witness, and so that's the tradition out of which I've come. And so, yes, when I came here in 2017, I came not as a senator, I came as an activist preacher. And we gathered in the rotunda, and they were debating the farm bill. And in the farm bill, you have both benefits for farmers and agriculture, but you also have nutrition benefits for food insecure people. 1 in 5 children, by the way, in our country, 1 in 5 children is food insecure, don't know where their next meal is coming from. I think for that to be the case in the wealthiest nation, not only on the planet, but in the history of humankind, is a sin.
Shame.
And I don't understand folks who are so obsessed with what people are doing in their bedroom that they don't pay attention to what's happening in the boardroom.
That's right.
Micah makes it plain. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good and what does the Lord require, but that you do justice and love kindness and walk humbly with your God. In his very first sermon, Jesus said he came to preach good news to the poor. And so when I hear Christian folk talk so badly about immigrants,
Yeah.
when most immigrants do not commit crimes, most immigrants do not live on the dole of our government. Most immigrants look nothing like Elon Musk.
That's right.
Yeah.
Woo! Woo! Preach it.
So I hear people beat up on the stranger. The Bible has a lot to say about how you treat the stranger. I hear people attack poor people and act like it's a crime to be poor, rather than to recognize that it is criminal for so many people to be poor.
That's right.
And they do all of this in the name of the one in whom I preach and believe every Sunday. Can I tell you something? Jesus is the biggest victim of identity theft in the United States. He doesn't know what they're talking about. And so I decided that I'm going to stand on the side of the people that he talked about. For the marginalized, the folk that other folk don't touch. And so I came here in that spirit in 2017. They were trying to pass the farm bill. They were cutting nutrition benefits from children. They were passing the first Trump tax cuts for the richest of the rich. And I gathered with an ecumenical gathering of clergy, not just Christian, but Muslim and Jewish and Hindu and others. And we were singing and praying in the rotunda of the building, and folks said, you can't sing in the rotunda. It's against the rules. You can't sing and pray in the rotunda. And I thought somebody needs to sing and pray in the rotunda. So I want to thank you, Cory Booker, and I want to thank you, Bishop Hakeem Jeffries, you preach early, for holding this vigil out here on the steps of the Capitol. This feels like a prayer meeting to me. This is like if you don't disperse, we're going to arrest you. What they didn't understand is that I had already been arrested. My imagination had been arrested by the grand idea that in the wealthiest country on the planet, we can make sure that every child has food for their body and books for their brain and culture and music for their heart. I didn't know. I had no idea that when I was getting arrested in this building in 2017 over the farm bill, that a few years later I'd be a member of the United States Senate writing the farm bill. We might need to go get arrested again. But I promise you we're going to do the work. And I promise you that we are doing the work, sometimes in ways you don't see. But don't doubt for a minute that we are standing up. We're standing up against these cuts against Medicaid. $800 billion out of Medicaid. Here's why you know they're lying. And I know Cory told me to be nice. I'm trying to be nice. But you know, prophets, I'm in that tradition. You know, there's a certain kind of cussing that prophets have to do. Here's why you know they're not telling the truth. I offered up a bill on the Senate floor as they were passing the budget resolution that said, won't we commit as a Senate body that we will not cut anybody's coverage from Medicaid. If they were really going after waste and fraud and abuse and were committed to not cutting people's coverage, they would have voted yes on my amendment. They voted my amendment down because they know that the math ain't mathing. So we'll continue to stand up and fight on behalf of all the people of our country. Because here's the truth. We need somehow to learn to look into other children's eyes, the eyes of other people's children, and see our own. Because they are all our children. And so, my beloved, as I close, and nobody believes a preacher when he says as I close, because I'm the pastor of Ebenezer Church, where Martin Luther King Jr. served, and because I live in Atlanta, one of the wonderful things about my life, Bishop, is I've spent the last 20 years as pastor of Ebenezer Church. Came there as a young pastor. I get to hang out all the time with giants. Like the late, great Joseph Lowry, who's left us. Like my parishioner, whose service I presided over, John Lewis, the great John Lewis. And so many others, like Andy Young. And Andy Young told me a story once that I think is so relevant for this moment, because everywhere I go, people are grabbing me in the airport too. Corey, we can't even get we can't get down the street. And there's a kind of angst in the air. And literally, I was at a parade in Savannah, Georgia, my hometown, and walking in the parade, and people were pulling on me while I was in the parade, and they were looking at me with fear in their eyes, and they were literally saying, save us, fight for us, stand up for us. Well, I'm committed to doing that. But Andy Young said that after they passed the Civil Rights Bill into law, they went to see President Johnson. Martin Luther King Jr. said to President Johnson, I need you to pass a voting rights law. President Johnson said, I know we need voting rights. I agree with you, Martin. But don't you know I just passed the Civil Rights Bill? I don't have the political capital to do it. There's no way I'll get it through the Congress. I do it, but I don't have the power. So they left that meeting. The staff was feeling all discouraged and all dejected. And they said to Dr. King, what are we going to do now? Andy and others said, what are we going to do? The president said he doesn't have the power. Martin Luther King Jr. straightened his back without even missing a beat. He said, well, I guess we're going to have to get the president some power. Reminds us that it's not about the people in power, it's about the power that's in the people. But you cannot take change and give it to somebody else. You can't outsource transformation. You can't outsource civic responsibility. We're going to be fighting inside this building. We're going to fight inside the suite. But we need some of y'all to